Welcome to Google Slides, and I hope you're enjoying our sessions today on Digital Learning Day. If you haven't gotten a chance to see what we've done so far, I encourage you to check out our spreadsheet. All the links are live and recorded, so if you miss a session and you want to go back and learn some more, you can go back and click on any of them and see the recorded video. So I'm going to be talking to you for a little bit about Google Slides, and I am Lindsay Sutton. I'm the high school ITRT at Stafford High School, and Jennifer Birdslow is my colleague who is going to be helping me out in the chat. So if you're watching this live and you have a question, she's going to be there to answer it for you and monitor that so I can focus on my presentation. And later, if you have questions for me, feel free to send me an email at suttonlh@staffordschools.net. And obviously, if you're watching the recording, you can email me too with any questions. So Google Slides. A lot of you may already use this and may just want to be aware of some of the more advanced features. But this is what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. A little bit about the similarities and differences from PowerPoint. I am assuming that many of us are already familiar with PowerPoint, so I'm not going to go through piece by piece, step by step, how to create a presentation. I'm just going to highlight how it looks very similar to PowerPoint, and then what are the additional features that are available to you in a Google slide. Printing and downloading options. We just get a lot of questions because I'm housed here in the library at Stafford. A lot of questions from students about printing Google Slides and how can we print them with notes and how can we print them so it's not 20 pieces of paper. So we'll highlight that. Sharing options, different tools that are available to you because it's a Google tool, a new presentation options, and then I want to show you a couple of add-ons for Google Slides that might be helpful to you. All right, so let's get started. And the nice thing about the fact that I set up these slides to keep myself on track is that we're already in a Google slide presentation. So I can now stare at my task list while I highlight some features of slides for you. All right, so if you've never been in Google Slides before, you'll notice that it is set up very similarly to PowerPoint. So I've got right now, I'm out of presentation mode. I'm looking at one of my slides here that I can click on and edit at any time. I can resize all of the text boxes. I can add pictures. I can add images. I can add lines and shapes and fill in the boxes and all these things up here on the toolbar that you're used to in a Microsoft product. Okay. Off here on the side to the left, I've got my slide viewer, and I can right click on any of these slides and cut, copy, paste, duplicate, change the background. I've got a nice layout preview if I want to change what I'm doing here, add or change a transition, all that kind of stuff. I can also drag and drop my slides. And all these things you can do in PowerPoint as well. Okay. Up here at the top, I've got my title. If I need to rename it, I just click on it and I can name it whatever I want, click off of it, and it is saved. And of course, in any of our Google apps, what we're working on is saved automatically. So you don't need to go over, you don't need to go File, Save As, which is nice. And this is just a nice reminder that all of my changes are automatically saved in Drive. And last edit was seconds ago. Okay. The other thing I like is if you click right on this all changes saved in Drive, you can see the version history of this. So right now you can see that I'm the only one that's been in this presentation editing it. But if I were collaborating with somebody on this presentation and I was, wondering what they had updated, or maybe I wanted to go back to a previous version, I can do that by clicking through this version history here. If you assign Google Slides as a class project, you can go in, as long as the slideshow is shared with you, and check the version history and see, you know, who did what and who changed what. And, you know, if there's ever any questions about, you know, somebody deleted everything that I wrote on that slide, you could actually track that back and see if that's true or not. So that's a handy feature of Google Slides. Up here at the top by the title, these are features of all with docs and sheets as well, and forms. You can add a star to your presentation, and what that means is within your Google Drive, there's a separate starred section, which is helpful for people like me that have tons of stuff in their drive and then tend to not be able to find important things really quickly. So if this was one of those things that I needed to reference again and again, I could just add a little star and then it would be in that special section of my Google Drive. And here on this folder is a nice way while I'm in a slideshow to organize it within my drive. Okay, so right now this is located just in my main drive. I probably should put it in a folder and organize it later. And I can do that from within my slideshow. Okay. I think Google does a nice job of allowing you to focus on your task at hand and do some of those organizational type things. You're searching with your Explore tool at the bottom, that kind of stuff, while still focusing on the task at hand. Okay, and I will highlight, since I just mentioned it, I do have an Explore tool. I did a session where I talked about this a little while ago, so you can go back and look at Google Scholar and Explore if you didn't see that one. But if I click here, in Slides, it seems to want to show me a bunch of layouts, but I can search for additional content on the web if I wanted to add it to this presentation. But, you know, it's just kind of nice how it gives me some of these options here. All right, so that's why that's popping up there. Okay, just going to click there so I remember what I need to note. I'm just going to highlight the menus here because, again, you'll notice that a lot of these features are very similar to what you're used to with a PowerPoint presentation. All right. And some of these I'm going to highlight as being different. Down here at the bottom, I can add speaker notes. Something I like is I can either type out my speaker notes, and it's pretty easy to do that slide by slide, or I can go up to Tools and I can voice type my speaker notes, which is nice because if you are practicing for some kind of important presentation, it might not be useful for you to type out your notes. You might want to kind of run it through, or I don't know, do a practice run and add some notes this way. So if I click on this microphone, it is now recording at the bottom what I'm saying, which obviously is nonsense and not helpful, but you can see how it understands my voice. Period, new line. Okay, so that's kind of handy. I'm going to stop that. And I can obviously get rid of that at any time. So that's an easy way to add your speaker notes as you're preparing for a presentation. Let's see. Let's talk about, you can also access your version history here. So I showed you up at the top, and you can also access it from the File menu as well. All right, let's go to printing and downloading options, since that's the next thing on this menu. If for some reason you are in a situation where you've created a presentation in Google Slides, but you need to convert it to PowerPoint because maybe there's no internet connection where you will be presenting, or whatever, you need to submit it, it's got to be in that format, you can easily download your Google Slides presentation into a PowerPoint. You can also make it into all these other formats, PDFs, JPEGs. So all of these can become images that could be posted somewhere else. Many of us might use Google Slides to post images and things like that on our school website. So that's where that is handy as well. This publish to the web feature, I'm just going to note, is how our school publishes our school announcements, our slideshow that runs throughout the day. We use that to post it to our website. And if I go here, I can just put a link, or I can embed it and then have it start the slideshow and restart, and it publishes. And so we've got this running slideshow that's published live so our parents can see the announcements from day to day. All right, print settings and preview. This is where I have to take a lot of students because they've been given a slideshow from a teacher and they need to take notes on it, or they need to, for whatever reason, print it out, which we try to discourage. But if you have to print your slideshow, you should always go to print settings and preview. And then here are your options for the handouts where you can make it tiny. This is, of course, a bad example because this is only 2 slides, but many of our students come to the library to print and they've got these 50-page PowerPoints, which obviously we would encourage them to print not on 50 separate pieces of paper. So that's just where we direct them on the file menu, print settings and preview, and you can see exactly what's going to print. And that's where you can also choose to print your speaker notes if you need something to hold in front of you while you might be using this to give a presentation. Okay. Your sharing options. So up here at the top, you can share a Google slideshow with anybody, just like a Google Doc, just like any of your Google products. And so I click share, and this looks very similar to the other apps. So if I start typing in Birdsall, I find Jennifer Birdsall, and I can share this slideshow with her. Of course, you have to pay attention to what rights you're giving them, and we've talked about this in several of our sessions today. If I want her to be able to collaborate with me on this, I can share it with edit rights. Notice that's the default, so you have to, what do you want people to be able to do? If I want her to just give me feedback, and this might be a good practice for a classroom, I could just give her rights to comment, or I can just give her rights to view, and I can say, and I've done a couple of training documents this way where I've put a presentation together and I've shared it with our teachers, and I've just given them view rights because I don't want them editing what's in there, but I'd like them to have this presentation accessible to them. All right. If I give Jennifer or anyone else comment rights or edit rights to this presentation, she can go in and add a comment to some particular part. So let's say, she doesn't like the title of this slide. She can highlight it, hit comment, and add a comment. This is obviously me adding a comment, but anybody could do that if I gave them the rights to. And she could type change title. All right. The other thing that you can do when somebody adds a comment, and this applies across the board with your with Google Docs and with forms and all that. I'll get a notification if somebody adds a comment to my presentation. I can click and I can resolve it, or I can open it up and reply to it. Something else that is nice about this, and Jennifer probably got a notification from me yesterday while I was testing this out, I can add a comment, and if I put a plus sign here, all of a sudden I can now tag her in this comment and say, please change title. I can assign it to her. And what that means is it sends her an email notification, and then she would get that and hopefully come in and, do whatever I asked her to do. This is helpful when you're working with students and maybe they're sending you a draft of something, whether it be a slideshow or a doc. You could add comments that way. All right. Let's talk about some of your tools. We've already talked about your Explore tool, and I talked about voice type for speaker notes. If you didn't watch my session on Google Keep, I encourage you to do so if you've never used Google Keep. but Keep is a notepad where you can take personal notes, notes for research, whatever. And if you have your students take notes to prepare for a presentation in Google Slides, they can go into the Keep notepad. All right, this is slowly loading, but it's going to start bringing up several of my notes from my Keep notepad. And I can use them to create my presentation. Okay, so that's kind of handy. That's one of those things where I said Google helps you focus on the task at hand and not make it so that you have to go outside into multiple tabs to look for stuff. So that's something that I like to highlight for students and teachers when I talk about slides. All right. Talked about that. So presentation options. So if you looked under the tools menu, see there's a new thing called Q&A history, and that's a newer feature when you present. So to present my slideshow, I can just go start presentation, and here's my full screen presentation here. Notice at the bottom, I've got some options when I hover over. Usually this goes away, but when I hover over, I can click on Q&A. I can click on my notes. If I had anything, any notes, this screen would pop up. And if I were presenting using an extended desktop setup, I could have this showing on one screen and the presentation showing on another screen. And that would be helpful. Here we go. I also have this pointer tool that I can bring up to demo Google Slides, which is kind of fun. If I'm not already using a smartboard and using maybe some of those inking tools that are kind of fun to use when you present. The last option here is Q&A, and I want to back out of this and show you how you can start that. And what this allows you to do is basically take questions from your audience, whatever your audience may be, as you're doing a Google Slide presentation. So if I click the drop-down menu to the right, I can click Use New Audience Q&A and View with Speaker Notes. And this just tells me, it just lets my audience submit questions. So I'm going to click and Start New. And now you'll notice, I'll move this out of the way. Whoops, not like that. Now you'll notice that there's a link at the top of my slideshow on all of the pages that you can go to this link and ask a question about my presentation. And if I have my notes viewer up where I can see it, then I see those questions and I can choose whether or not I want to address them immediately, or maybe I just want, maybe I'm presenting a lesson to my students and I want them to submit questions that we'll talk about later. So you don't necessarily have to address them. Just note that they can ask questions anonymously. I would, of course, recommend that you not be showing the questions as you're presenting, but it just be something that you see if you're using this with students. So that's a nice little addition to Google Slides that I like. All right, last thing real quick. In lots of our Google tools, we have an add-ons menu with a lot of different tools that different people have developed to work alongside the Google products. And many of them end up being adopted by Google and are actual features. But if you go to add-ons in Slides, you can scroll through and see some of the options that are available to you. And they're always changing as people write different programs and submit them to Google. So every now and then, I would encourage you to take a glance through what's available. I installed this one called Pear Deck, which allows you, as you can see, to add formative assessments and interactive questions to your Google Slides. And I'm not going to demo that full out because we're running short on time, but I just want you to see if I open it. Once I install an add-on, it shows up in my menu. When I open it, off to the side, you can see where I can ask different types of questions for my students. And it has some pre-created slides that I can use. and then I can add my own. And of course, there are features if you pay for it, but there's still a lot of nice functionality with the free version and the different kind of questions. So if you already have a presentation that you're using with students and you don't want to recreate the wheel, you can do a lot of that questioning and getting some feedback from students right here within slides. Okay, and you would just present with Pear Deck, and that would ask the questions as you were live presenting. All right, so that is a very quick overview of Google Slides. I hope it was helpful. If you have further questions, like I said, feel free to reach out and send me an email, and I would be happy to get back in touch with you. Thank you for watching. I hope you continue watching our presentations for the rest of the day.